we can go through a gauntlet of, how I felt in that situation. Like I felt like I'm doing everything right.
Mm-hmm.
Like I'm literally weeks
Yeah.
of being released from completing my sentence to the state.
Made you question your path a
My,
little bit?
questioned my path, my understanding of what I was doing with myself. It made me question my reality. It made me feel like, man, if I'm still messing up, then what am I actually doing? What am I actually doing in my life that I am still messing up and going back to jail?
Right. Welcome to Transformation Blueprint, where we unpack our criminal legal system and build pathways to change. I'm Zeke Caligiuri from the Minnesota Justice Research Center. Each episode, we translate research into actionable knowledge, spotlight local and national change makers, and connect you with ways to create a more just Minnesota. Whether you're an advocate, policymaker, or someone who cares about justice, this is your blueprint for transformation. Today, we're talking about community supervision, which is the umbrella term for probation, parole, and supervised release. It refers to being under correctional control while living in community. Minnesota has an extremely low number of people inside jail and prison. That's compared to the rest of the country. But when we add community supervision to this number, Minnesota jumps to the 13th highest in the nation for our rate of people under correctional control, according to Prison Policy Initiative. Our state's reliance on supervision has risen dramatically for decades, but our current practices haven't been super effective. We in the state of Minnesota have made some significant policy reforms, like restoration of voting rights for those on parole and probation who finished their time inside, and the creation of a probation cap of 5 years to reduce excessively long probation sentences. But there's still progress to be made. In 2023, when I interviewed people currently on supervision about the hurdles they were facing to successfully complete their terms, as a part of a project for MNJRC's Transforming Community Supervision, it was clear there's still too many people on probation for too long, too many people cycling in and out of incarceration for violations, and too many people overburdened by the psychological and economic cost of being under correctional control while trying to build a life of their own. Today, I'm hoping to have a similar conversation with our guest. I'm honored to introduce Jeffrey Dorr-Slowey, one of this year's Just Lead Fellows. MNJRC's Just Lead Fellowship is a year-long leadership development program harnessing justice-impacted people's firsthand knowledge of the criminal legal system to prepare them for leadership positions on state boards and commissions. Jeffrey's also a community organizer with Tone Up. He advocates for and empowers justice-impacted people through the reentry process, particularly through personal, professional, and political development training. Welcome.
How you doing? How you doing? My name Buju. Umikagabo Indigenous Cause, Magizi Dodem, Mrs. Zagai Ghana, Nishnabé and Dunjaba. So that stands for I am Standing Beaver from the Eagle Clan, and I represent the Mille Lacs Band of the Anishinaabe people. Thank you.
Blessings. Thank you for being here. All right. Is there anything else you'd like us to know about that I didn't cover in our introduction about who you are and what you do out here?
I'm also a business owner. I'm the principal and owner of Omikagabo Consultant LLC. I'm also very into my spiritual practices as a Anishinaabe man.
Well, we're glad to have you here too, definitely. I'm curious, so we're talking about community supervision. In theory, what do you think the goals of community supervision are? Why does it exist in our community, right? You have thoughts on it?
Well, in theory, it's to provide a safety net for community, for offenders coming home, justice impacted people coming home from incarceration. In theory, it's also to provide support network for justice impacted individuals. Somebody that would provide resources like job placements or housing placements or things of that nature that somebody could thrive. You know what I mean? But
Sure. And I mean, and so think about, and I think about that when we ask, like, what is the goal of community supervision, right? Like, why is the point? Like, why then would somebody then be under the supervision of law enforcement continuing, say, after their incarceration or in place of incarceration, right? And I think you hit something right on the head when you were saying safety, right? It's meant to be a mechanism of public safety, right? Where they're in theory that you have people coming home from incarceration who need to make that adjustment. Oftentimes, like the idea of being in prison is you've taken somebody from society and now you're putting them right back in. The idea that you would have law enforcement keep an eye on folks or measure sort of what they're, what it is that they are doing in the community when they come home, too, with this idea that dangerous people went away, we're bringing them home, we're going to keep an eye on the dangerous people, right? I guess in my own personal experience, what I've realized is that, right, oftentimes what incarceration does or is it sort of creates these barriers from when you get home too, right? Like when you come home, you've now had a stretch of sometimes it's years, sometimes it's months away from, for one, being able to work, being able to spend time with your family, and oftentimes, right, like those create divides and what have you too. And so I guess like it's meant to create safety, but also we end up with a bunch of people coming home who need some support, some help and some support too, right? I guess what my question is that like if the intention is to create public safety, is that what our present community supervision system is doing?
I would, I my personal experience, I wouldn't agree. For myself, that was released in January 4th of 2018, and finally supervision July 24th of 2025. Um, I've had many technical violations based on a plethora of reasons. Some of them for very small offenses, such as not making a call on time or being 5 minutes late because the bus didn't get me home on time or some such. Um, anyways, that being said, it's supposed to give you this structure. Okay, you got this structure transition into to society where okay you could go to work, you can do this, you can do things to be productive. But there's underlying things. Me myself, I've been convicted of homicide. So my agent would put barriers up on certain jobs. Oh, you can't be a carpenter because I don't want you in residence. Well, I'm not somebody that has to register as a predatory offender or anything of that nature, right? But he's looking at me as that kind of person, and I'm like, I'm qualified for this job. Why can't I have this job? So that was like the first 6 years of my parole, going through things like that.
And 6 years on parole is a significant amount of time. That means you have to report to somebody, you go through different phases. And I think we'll talk a little bit about sort of like what those phases are here in a little bit. And I guess sort of to sort of reel it back to the sort of original question, you coming home, did you feel you were still, after a significant period of incarceration, did you still feel as though you were a danger to society? Were you something, was your release in some way, right, like, uh, impacting whether or not, like, public safety?
My release,
in your mind, like as a
yeah,
person coming home with your hopes and dreams, the things that you built on the way in.
I don't believe I was any kind of risk to anybody. When I came home, I felt like I did a lot to improve my thoughts and my beliefs while I was incarcerated. So when I came home, I had these beliefs of what I could do in this world. I wasn't ill prepared for being put in this world and dealing with stigmatisms of being convicted of a crime or being on some kind of supervision. No, you can't get this job because you don't have no work history, or no, you can't get this job because you got a criminal background. You can't pass a test, a background test check. You know what I mean? So there's hurdles like these that you're not prepared for. That you're qualified for some of these employment placements, right? But then, people are like, yeah, we're not willing to hire you for this because of that. And then you got the, going back to the supervision aspect, some of these other jobs that are paying well, carpentry is one of them,
Sure.
where there was a situation.
General construction, yeah.
Yeah, so you got agents getting in the way of that, which ain't conducive to somebody building their life. So it's just another mechanism of.
And I've always thought about that in a sense that if somebody has prepared themselves to come home, especially after significant times of incarceration, and you've come home, you feel like you've built some skills, some capabilities, you feel like you've gotten your mind in the mind state to want to succeed out here, and you come home and you find, sort of these barriers. I mean, barriers have always existed. That's a thing. Mm-hmm. We have barriers of entry and in workforces and work industries, throughout, the country. And my question though is, like, I'm curious if, is there any element of it that sort of makes a human being less safe, right? Like, if you come home and you've prepared yourself for these things and yet you have this person in front of you that says, no, you can't do this, right? Like, how does that impact the way you're able to then live your life, move, towards your goals, right? All the things that you planned for this, right? That's my curiosity, right?
Well, for me, it didn't work for me in that direction. The more that I heard no's, and the more my light began to dim, I fell into a lot of things. I wasn't. Well, I'll say this. Became more of a danger to myself. I fell into addiction.
Okay.
I was in. I was dealing with a lot of traumas that I wasn't ready to face. You know what I mean? So, it took a lot of growing up and going through some intense therapy to make it through all that. You know what I mean? And
was that something you sought out once you got out?
Yeah, yes, actually. So I was on ISR for a period of 3 years. ISR is intensive supervised release. It's the highest form of release that one can be released from incarceration. Um, they in one of the that's decided by what's called a MNJRC score. It's some kind of algorithm that computes whether you're likely to recidivate. I, me personally, I think it's immoral.
Because it's an algorithm and it's not people. It's not people that know you making a decision around things, right?
Like me personally, there's no way I could ever lower my MNJRC score, no matter what, and I don't understand how that is possible. I could be out 20 years and it'll still remain the same. So that being said, I finally made it off, and I was on supervised release for about 6 months. And this was in the midst of my unresolved trauma, which led into the addiction. You know what I mean? And the addiction led into me being convicted of another drug offense. which sent me back. And I'm like, well, in this situation again, based on some stuff that I don't have resolved, let me try and seek out some kind of care. You know what I mean? And that's what I did. It started in Lino Lakes. I met this mental health lady, Dr. Davis. She's amazing. And she helped me figure some things out to get me going. And then once I got out, I went into my recovery, which I sought out, mental health, drug addiction, spiritual health, like I really dug in. So after that, that's when, all these other things start becoming, let me go chase my goals again. You know what I mean? All the things that I thought I was going to be able to do prior to being released in 2018, these was all things that I thought I was going to be able to do before.
And when you came back again, what year was it?
This was, I believe it was 2023, January 2023.
And you're thinking 2023, we're talking, this is post murder of George Floyd, post, the beginning of the global pandemic, right? The world changed quite a bit, even in that particular period of time coming home. I have to imagine that was probably daunting in itself, and understanding and looking at the community, which had, in a lot of ways, had to make a lot of shifts in their own consciousness, right? Especially you. I mean, you're from Minneapolis. I'm from Minneapolis, so we understand the huge strain on the city, and sort of the changes and the change in its understanding of itself over that period of time, and coming home to it had to feel, kind of, daunting, right?
Yeah. For me, there's also the difference of the way I approach my supervised release. You know what I mean?
Yeah, explain that.
So the first 5 years prior to 2023, I've been with the same ISR agent the whole 7 years. But
it's a long time to be on ISR.
Oh yeah. I came home to this field of work. I made a decision to let my agent know, like, look, this is what I am doing with my life. I'm going to be a community organizer. This is where I'm going to work, which is at Tone Up, which is teaching ourselves new examples to uplift people. We're a justice impacted led organization that does reentry services for men and women coming home that need second chances. And that opened up a lot of avenues for me to delve into so many more avenues along this path.
And maybe contextualize and understand the experience more, right?
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, knowing when you come home the first time, like, this is all pretty new. It's very much your personal experience. It's your interactions with your supervision. Coming home this next time, you start to interact with other people who are just as impacted, who are working in, this particular community, and out here trying to, make some strides, right? Gives you some more context as to what this experience is for, all the people that end up coming out and having to deal with community supervision, right?
Yeah, I think the difference being is I wasn't accepting a no. When I let them know, like, this is
a no to who? From your agent?
From my supervising agent. Okay. Like, look, I know you said previously I don't want you in the community based on your offense, and I'm like, no, I'm not accepting that no more, because this is what I need to do for myself to heal as a person, but to feel better as a person in this community. Like, I'm actually giving back, because at the end of the day, that's what helps us heal as justice impacted people. I know for me it does, in those that I have in my network that does. You know what I mean? So having people that I'm associated with, doing good in their lives, it made the acceptance of, okay, yeah, I'm gonna let you do what you're doing this time. I'm not going to keep bothering you because of all these X, Y, and Z technical violations.
So can you tell me, you said that you weren't going to take no for an answer, but like, can you tell me then how, say your agent and the group that runs your ISR responded to this, right? Like, I mean, where was there support behind it? Was there pushback? I'm curious what their thinking was about your transition into, you know, which feels like a new consciousness for you, a new, yeah,
Oh yeah, so it was
new way of life.
night and day, from my first experience to the second experience, where there wasn't very much pushback at all. You know what I mean? There was a couple of times I'd have to say, well, I'll shoot this up to your supervisor. And
You
this
saying
was,
you had to do that? Like you
oh
were
yes,
thinking you would have to jump over
oh
your
yes,
actual, okay.
oh yeah, and this was not necessarily community organizing events for that situation. That was more spiritual
Okay.
events.
Which also really qualifies as like pro-social gathering, things that is meant to help us get,
Most definitely.
yeah,
These are
reintegrated into our communities, right? Yeah,
spiritual ceremonies. You know what I mean?
absolutely.
So once words like that are being said, he understands the difference of the growth of the man that was okay. Yeah, I'm just trying to make it through. To no, I'm being proactive in building
Sure,
my life.
sure. No, that makes sense too. I'm glad though that they gave you a little room and allowed you to sort of grow up a little bit in the movement. When I say grow up, I mean more sort of just grow out, right?
Yeah.
Um, I guess some of my questions too is like those immediate barriers from the first time, even recently since then too, right? Um, like I'm still curious. What are some of these barriers that you're living with now, right? Like they're because you're still are you off supervision
No,
now? So now you don't deal with
I've
okay.
made it off parole July 24th of 2025. So just a couple months ago. Um, but I will speak on them barriers leading up to being out parole. There was a situation 3 weeks out of my release of parole, and I lose my phone. But the difference is I have another phone on me that I staying in contact with my ISR agent,
Okay.
right? So I stay 5 days out. I finally get my new phone in. I've been in contact with my agent through my office phone, and I get my new phone registered, all everything up to date. I check my messages and find out I got a warrant for me, not staying in contact with my agent. So, I send them screenshots. Here's your number. Here's your name. Here's all the, here's all the text of me staying in contact with you. Here's my schedules. Everything lines up. Here's
Which
the
is a lot of administrative work now that
yes,
you are adding on top of trying to find employment, trying to make sure that you have adequate housing, trying to make sure that you are set up and good, right? Like that's a lot of administrative work now that you are responsible for, right? As something where, I mean, where we come from, that's not a lot of what's emphasized, right? We're not getting a whole lot of that training or understanding how to keep with it too. I'm sorry, keep rolling.
no. So I give them the invoice of my phone of it being lost. All of that. Uh, they come kidnap me.
They came and got you for
They
this.
came and kidnapped me July 4th. I call my agent the night of. This was July 3rd. I find out I got a warrant. I call him. I'm like, listen, man, buses ain't running. It's too late. I'm not walking to jail. I'll do it first thing in the morning.
Okay.
Turn myself in, right?
Because that's difficult, though. It's difficult to turn yourself into.
But I'm a stand-up man. I'm accountable for all my actions. I have no problem turning myself in.
Well, and you've been in a system long enough that you understand, too, like, oftentimes it just ends up being much worse on the back end. You let the warrants go. I understand certain people's capacities. Sometimes you, like that, you feel like that's that option, right? We end up having a narrowing of our possibilities, and sometimes you have to choose one tough decision over a different tough decision, right? It's weighing those. Yeah.
Right. Whereas in today, me, if I make a mistake, I'm like, no, I got to take care of this right away. Whether it's uh, intentional, like when you're using drugs and you're in the midst of addiction, as opposed to, oh shit, man, I lost my phone.
Or missing a call or something, or missing a meet. Yeah.
You know what I mean? So moving on to that, I did get a hold of my agent that morning. I woke up. He didn't answer his phone, but I called the officer today, which is the officer that supervises the intentional supervised release.
So for people that don't understand, like essentially when you come out on ISR, what you have is a team of agents. You may have a primary agent that you work with, but you have a team of agents that's responsible for you 24 hours a day, right? It's 3 different shifts, right?
Yeah.
There's the first, second, and the third. It covers all 24 hours. And so there is somebody on board at all times, right? It's meant to be a team that is keeping an eye on you, that is getting you to the end of this ISR too. So when you went, you didn't get the particular agent that you're used to interacting with, but there is somebody there for the day that you ended up finding and reaching. Yeah.
Right. Okay. So I called the officer today. My particular agent answered, and I'm like, hey, listen, man, I know you got my information. He's like, oh yeah, I'm in the middle of an emergency. I'll call you right back. I'm like, listen, dude, I'm trying to tell you I'm on my way to turn myself in. Mm-hmm. He's like, I'll call you back. I look out the window, task force out there pulling up. I'm like, hey, listen, dude, I'll be right down.
What does the task force look like? Like, how many people is that? Like, are they in black suits? Is this?
So yes, they are in black suits. They're wearing vests that says task force. They come with assault rifles.
They showed up to you with assault rifles because you lost a phone.
Yes. There's about 20 of them.
Because without a phone, you now become unsafe to society. That's what the implication.
That's what the implication, that I'm unaccountable. I am now a danger to society because you can't get a hold of me. Mm-hmm. In actual reality, I've been in contact the whole time. I've been going to my work events, community organizing events, So
you've somewhat stabilized at this point, right? Like, yeah, there may be some elements of your life that haven't quite figured themselves out with, but at this time, like, you've made a conscious choice. Then I have this certain particular pathway that I am working on to.
At this point in time, I've been in recovery for about 4.5 years. I've been employed at Tone Up for about 2 years. I've had my home. I've been renting for about 5 months at this time. You know what I mean? So I've been pretty stable. Yeah. So this situation where they showed up and snatched me out of my house and brought me to jail was, I understand, but it's like, dude, I've been in contact. I talked to you.
I did all the things I thought I was supposed to do.
Okay. That being said, they brought me to jail. They didn't book me in. They didn't fingerprint me. They put me in a cell under somebody else's name. Mm-hmm. I got a hold of my agent, and he's like, listen, man, we're going to restructure you, this, that, and the other. And I'm like, okay, that's great, but my people can't find me in jail.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That's scary.
Well, because we have a support system, and right, like, they depend on knowing where we are so that they can help us, right? Mm-hmm. In the same way that we support others as a part of other people's support systems too. And so now you're talking about an experience where now you're kind of missing in action around something that looks like a technical violation. I mean, that's got to feel pretty disheartening. I mean, that's got to impact also the way you feel about this sort of turn and the choices you've made yourself, right? Like, oftentimes what I've always remembered too, with part of incarceration and part of even being in, part of carceral processes, is this idea that as things come, they end up being our fault, right? If something accidental happens in the life of any, other human being, right, you may have certain small, like, sort of low scale consequences, but things like losing your phone, yeah, it's a super hassle. Yeah, you got to go find another. Like, there's a whole kind of restart. It's like losing your wallet in a way too, but not being something that impacts your freedom or whether or not you're going to go sit in a cage for a little while, right? Like, that's got to feel in a certain way too, like unfair. unjust, right? Like, I'm curious about your thoughts about that. Not actual individual people, but, but like the fact that this is what this system told you about yourself, what's
Well,
necessary for yourself.
yeah, we can go through a gauntlet of, how I felt in that situation. Like I felt like I'm doing everything right.
Mm-hmm.
Like I'm literally weeks
Yeah.
of being released from completing my sentence to the state. You know what I mean? And
And you're trying to get to a point where you're safe, right? It's a safety for yourself from the scrutiny of being reincarcerated.
that part, you know what I mean? So, yeah, it made me feel like, man, if I'm still messing up, then what am I actually doing? What am I actually doing in my life that I am still messing up and going back to jail? It,
Made
it
you question your path a little bit?
questioned my path, my understanding of what I was doing with myself. It made me question my reality, because, not to mention, let's revisit. I wasn't actually booked in under Jeffrey Dorr-Slowey.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Therefore, I never was really in that jail technically. Yeah. You know what I mean? Because
But your body knows and your mind knows.
My body does. My
Yeah.
mind, my being. Like, in today's climate where people are being disappeared. You know what I mean?
Sure.
It doesn't matter that I'm an indigenous man. I'm a violent criminal, but all that's behind me. But that doesn't say, oh, you doesn't meet the criteria of that person over there. You look like them, so we're gonna just send you somewhere.
Well, definitely. I mean, that's definitely in the days where there are roundups, right? I would say, and when I say the days, I'm meaning presently. But we can think back to a time. If you remember, in the '90s, you grew up in South Minneapolis, as did I. As did I. Around a time when you would have these sort of sweeping raids. They would have jump outs. They would jump out of the vans, throw a bunch of people into vans without necessarily probable cause, except for being out in the street at certain times, bring you into jail, sort it out later, right? That, like, we understand about how, some of the ways in which, right, you can definitely disappear in a system, right? Oftentimes, right, we have people will go away, they'll go through a whole court process, and you won't see somebody for several years and wonder where they were, and they will have been gone for a little bit, and somehow, there are lots of cracks to fall within, right? And that's got to be, a fear that you're living with when you are, sitting in here and dealing with this, and also probably wondering, when does this stuff end? At some point, right? We're talking about years of this. At some point, when is the point where I am not under this kind of scrutiny anymore and I can go and live, right?
The trauma of that hasn't healed yet for a couple months. Mm-hmm. I completed my sentence and I still feel under that scrutiny.
Well, in a couple of months, yeah, it's not a long time at all.
I mean, like there's times I wake up, reach for my phone to send out my schedule. Like, this is a couple months later. I'm like, why am I doing this?
Yeah.
Like, this is things that you grow used to doing, and you don't understand the trauma it causes. You know what I mean? To the being that, and you got to go through. You got to go through intense, reflection of what this is doing to you and how to heal it. You know what I mean? At the end of the day, because, living under that intense.
Well, I mean, I can definitely, I can relate to that. I understand completely, because we're thinking, right? For one, you have these things inside of yourself you have to figure out. Certain things we have to settle, negotiate, in order to feel like we can move forward with things in our lives, right? But then on top of it, there's a whole, a stretch of that is about now having to reintroduce ourselves to our families and to our friends and the people we've met over the course of our lifetime. Oftentimes in those situations, we may have harmed them over the years, and I just mean in different ways, oftentimes psychological and emotional beyond physical even. also putting, family through a long sort of rigorous incarceration, right, that, right, has imposed the idea that all the things that are happening to you are of your own creation. And whereas in one element, the actual commission of a crime at the very beginning of this is our creation of it. However, when we go into incarceration, we get a different experience, right? And you go through these long incarcerations, right, where you've been under, complete, total human domination by a system. They're in control of your physical body, your emotional and psychological, as well as your financial, as a financial unit. They're responsible for your finance, right? All of these things are under the scrutiny of thing, and you come out of it. I have long suggested the idea that, like, when you come out, now you need to be rehabilitated from your incarceration, and they put you into a different kind of incarceration, right? And that's the supervision, oftentimes, that has not worked towards getting us to a place where we are more free. It's just worked us more to a place we are more manageable by system, right? Now, I know there are people working in those processes now towards a different kind of model, but the first model always was sort of a retributive or a punitive model that worked on, right, violating folks at pretty much all costs, right? Versus rewarding folks and trying to get people off of a caseload. And what we ended up getting was this sort of ballooning population of people on community supervision, right? We have a smaller prison system. Much of that is because we're a smaller state, so we incarcerate fewer people. Per capita, we still do. Where we have always kept up with the rest of the nation is at the community supervision level, right? They've always used that as They've used that as a substitute in a lot of ways too, using probation for prison, but also then on the back end having this mandatory period of time where you're exposed to a lot of the same values and processes that we were scrutinized by while we were inside, right? I think, like, a thing that should be clear for folks listening that may not understand is the complete domination within a carceral situation, right, is super harmful for human beings. They live in actual cages. You've been treated and reduced to being, subjugated beneath this system at the bottom level of it. They have an entire chain of command. We're at the bottom of it, right? Our needs and demands are the least valuable of anything in that system, and that that still exists today. To come home then and now, like, have to live as somebody who has been subjugated under these terms, right, and to be subjugated under a new set of terms too, it's certainly not cohesive to you getting healthier, right? When you were talking about coming out and wanting and saying, I have a sort of changed mind, I have to get myself healthy too, right? Certainly bringing healthy people home would be a part of the idea of creating a safer society, because we're bringing safer, healthier human beings home versus bringing sick and unwell people home, right? And expecting that they're supposed to navigate this thing. I think, like, the big thing is, you can tell me how you feel about it too, is that, all of that previous thinking is built and based around the idea of fear. If we hurt you enough for what you did, right, you will be afraid to do those things again. And that's what's supposed to keep you from not acting in accordance with the supervision.
Yeah, I think they missed me with that one, right? I think it was the people that I was in there with, the comrades, justice impacted people that had good hearts, that was able to help me expand my wants and desires in this world. I think that's where the growth came from within. It came from people like yourself, and others in our network.
You're saying that ran a narrative that was counter to that too.
Yes, we wasn't with that shit.
Yeah.
We took the traumas and we looked at it and we hated it enough, or we was just at the end of the day we was like, despite our situations, this don't define who we are at the end of the day. You know, we gonna be who we're gonna be, and we're just gonna be all around good dudes because that's who we are, and that's where the growth came from for us, right?
But sometimes it's hard when you have this sort of structure
Yeah.
looming over us.
Yes, you got the thought
yeah.
that we just want to continue and stepping on you and making everything as possibly hard as possible.
Yeah.
You know, difficult for you as possible to grow beyond anything. You know, like all of that. It's like in spite of. You know, like I get it. We got a system that does not care for our humanity. You know, at the end of the day, and
there may be individuals in it, right? Like I think we've all met people that worked in these places or people that have worked that don't necessarily reflect that, but it's a system that becomes so impersonal.
That's so. We're talking about people. Then we're not talking about a system. You know what I mean?
No, absolutely.
Even though you got the people that make the system work, you got individuals that are outliers that say, you know, hey, listen, man, I don't think that's right, so I'm not gonna, you know, I might just step back from the company line a little bit to.
Well, and I think we depended upon that when we were still in. There were people that understood we're human beings. They interacted with you as human beings, even if the processes, the rules, the terms of what the incarceration did not coincide with our humanity or coincide with an idea of us as human beings, right? And it carries over into when we get out too, right? We have a bunch of, when I look at supervision now, you have a bunch of people who worked under, that particular fear-based philosophy. And now as we're starting to move to a different direction, you have a lot of these same people that are still agents, that are still staff members within these processes that were working and were a part of the way the system was before.
I'm somebody that has had roughly about 30 technical violations, right? Like I said, that covers a lot of different areas, from losing your phone, missing a call,
missing appointments, maybe?
Missing appointments. You got somebody having a disagreement with me advocating for myself. Like anybody could say anything.
Failed drug tests.
There's failed drug tests.
I'm not saying for you specifically.
No,
we're just thinking of some of the ways
cannabis, in which, so there was many different things, right? In a sense, I would, in one's view, I'm the poster child for why this system is set up the way it's set up. Somebody that served an extensive amount of time for a very violent crime. So all these violations, I've been restructured, which is basically, in for lack of a better term, given another chance. After
for folks they don't know, like, so what'll happen is on your supervision, right? They can violate you, or you may get a violation. They have options in there. One is to send you back to incarceration. Another is to restructure your supervision, which means you could start over at maybe an earlier phase, yes, right?
Correct.
And so restructuring is something that they've done for a long time, and it's oftentimes seen as an alternative to incarceration, so that so that you don't have to return. Sometimes that happens as a result of having to go in for a few weeks and deal with it, go in front of board.
So each of these times, of these restructures, my agent would say, well, we already gave them this many chances. And my argument would always be, well, I'm not just throwing these chances away. I'm actually working towards building my life each and every time. And that's the way hearing release unit, which is HRU, the ones that hold our courts, hold us responsible or accountable for our violations.
It's the hearing that determines if you're going to go back to prison or not,
yes,
but also determines whether they'll restructure what your supervision looks
like. You know what I mean? So, I've been restructured 20 some times as well.
It's ridiculous.
That being said, that could be said from one's point of view. Well, the system isn't working because we're not keep putting them back in. We keep giving them a chance after a chance. But in the flip side, it's like, hold on, that's the reflection of a man that's not giving up, that's resilient, continuing to keep fighting to rebuild his life despite all these hurdles of not being able to get employment, not being able to get home, not being able to get, you know what I mean, all these extra things that we're supposed to do to have an actual structured life, you know what I mean, a stable life. So you could look at it in two different ways. You know, like I'm a poster child of why the system failed. Well, if that's the case, he's getting all these extra chances. No, it's not all these extra chances. It's all these. Why is he getting all these technical violations? What can we do to help stem these problems? Okay.
Versus, say, committing more violent crime. You don't have any of that. That's not what we're talking about here. What we are talking about are these technical violations that hindered your life. So my question, and maybe that you could just sort of flow into that, is, had you taken away the intense supervised release, you taken away a lot of the terms of your supervision, had it been something simple like I just have to make a phone call once a month, do you feel like your reentry would have been more possible? Do you feel like you could have gotten to further along in your process towards your goals if you didn't have those things in place?
I think for me personally, I think it would have helped
to not be under that
to not being under that much scrutiny. I wasn't somebody that needed training wheels. I would, if you ask a lot of my people, other than the times I was lost into addiction, which was a few months, compared to the years, they would say I never gave up. I kept working no matter what, you know, to try. You know, there's you got reasons of not having stable housing.
Sure.
You know, that when it all boils
Which
down,
plagues the entire homecoming community, folks returning home from incarceration.
which you know, in all honesty, man, I was homeless 7 years
Sure.
prior to finding a place to rent. You know, and that's somebody that's worked most of the time. You know, somebody that went to school most of the time. You know, somebody that always did something to build my life. You know, so you know, going back to the scrutiny of all these other things and all these other hurdles, yes, you know, being under less scrutiny probably would have helped in a lot of other ways other than just not just having the responsibility of being under that scrutiny, but the mental health aspect of not having all that stress of okay, now I have to give you a schedule every day, or I got to give you a movement every time I move, whether I stop at a place or not. You know, simple things.
Okay, can I ask you real quick too? So, and we asked this to all of our guests on here too. If you had a magic wand and you could change one thing about our criminal legal system, what would that be? One thing.
I'd make reentry a thing.
What do you mean? Like,
So I instead of community supervision after, I'd make it a more transitional healing thing. You know, we're supposed to be going in to be rehabilitated. That's not necessarily always the case, but that transition between incarceration and community, I think there should be a system in place where it helps soften the blow of all the traumas of everything being thrown at you at once. Somebody that could help get you employment, help get you trained up and developed, you know, for a world that you actually want to be a part of. a productive citizen. Um, you know,
Some life guidance that helps you with all the sort of elements of your life as you start to learn and reintegrate, with the intention of keeping you out rather than putting you back in, right?
most definitely about building you up as a person. All around.
Okay. All right. I appreciate that. Are there places where our listeners who want to get involved with this work go, to learn more around community supervision, things they could read or watch, right? People they could be tapped in with. What are you thinking?
So you could always reach out to toneup.org. That's TONEUP.org. We
Big shout out to Tone Up. They do a lot of really good work in our community,
very much.
supporting a lot of our brothers. Yes.
Until we are all free. We got a lot of sister companies out there. Anybody else? We got MNJRC. Of course. Reentry Lab. I know they're helping us.
And all these places have websites, things and guidance around the work that they do, some of the ways in which folks can get involved too. I feel like there are all kinds of places and opportunities for folks to volunteer, contribute some time and some space and some care to this too. I think sort of as we wrap, right, there's definitely an obligation. We put a whole generation of folks, these were people's brothers and sisters and friends and their children into incarceration, and fathers and mothers, and they come out after a certain period of time. It is important that there is community that supports people when they come home. It's important that people are being held up, and that when people want to make changes in their own lives, they want to transform themselves, right? That they are encouraged, supported, resourced, right? And so by all means, try to figure out where you can get involved, and all the resources, organizations that Jeffrey mentioned will be linked below. So I want to thank you for coming out, right? We had to schedule a couple of different times to figure it out, man. I'm glad we made this happen too. You're doing a lot of good work, right? You've come through a lot, right? That's the thing, and just know that, I'm super glad that you're here and able to collaborate with us here. Yeah.
Well,
and encourage you. Yeah.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Just to give a little more context to exactly what we were talking about in community supervision. When you go into the criminal legal system, you're in the court system, they will give you a sentence. Sometimes they may give you probation, in which you would do under community supervision, that your probation officer, the probation officer at the county level, then determines probably risk assess. They do a risk assessment around sort of what level in which you are going to do your probation. Sometimes that's a reporting center, sometimes that's through an actual agent. When you go through the court system and they sentence you to prison, in the state of Minnesota, you will do 2/3 of your sentence incarcerated within any number of facilities in the state prison system here. And you'll do the final third on supervision out in the community. Now, while you're incarcerated, right, they have certain indicating factors, right? And they build a certain score for you, a certain risk assessment based around certain factors. It is sort of a collection of some basic info around discipline, your discipline record while you're incarcerated, maybe family support, maybe, any number of, several other factors of what has happened while you are incarcerated. And they make a determination on sort of what level of supervision you are going to be on when you come out for that final third of your sentence. The most severe of that, meaning the people that they consider to be most, at greatest risk of reoffending, they're placed on ISR, right? And then there are other levels of it too. There is sort of what they kind of, the basic package where you go, you meet with a parole officer once a month until they determine that the necessity for that is lessened, and usually after a period of maybe 18 months to 24 months, they'll determine and then place you on a minimum status where you are now just calling and checking in with parole too. So there's several different levels. When we are speaking about those, that is sort of how somebody is determined to get put on this. So oftentimes after you've come out of a long period of time, a couple of different things can happen. One is they can look at your crime. They would say the severity of something, being a part of a homicide or something, another form of severe punishment or severe crime, can sometimes indicate, right, that there is a risk in your reentry, right? Oftentimes, right, after you've been incarcerated for so long, you've had so many years to fulfill some of the programming that exists, right, to carve out your own life, build a community to wait for you when you come home. And so folks who are coming home from prison, they come home from, there's a huge variance of lived experience that they re-enter into society with too. If you're interested in learning more about MNJRC's Transforming Community Supervision project, head to mnjrc.org/reports if you want to learn more about or make sense of Minnesota's community supervision reforms. We're tracking their impacts too. The link for that will be in the description below. Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Transformation Blueprint. Here at the JRC, we believe in the power of possibility and transformation. This work translates our efforts, aligns transformation initiatives, and provides education on complex legal issues, all to share the story of our collective work and how we can all contribute to it. Join us next time as we continue building the blueprint for a more just Minnesota. Until then, stay engaged, stay curious, and remember that transformation starts with you.